Hello everyone, I'm Stella Kalfas of the Mental Health Association of Greater Chicago. And in our series of A Message of Hope, we include individuals who have dealt with mental illness and have overcome and have succeeded. And today with us we have Xavier Fulton. Xavier started out as a Fighting Illini football team member, very successful, was drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the 5th round of the 2009 NFL Draft. Fulton has also been a member of the Indianapolis Colts, San Francisco 49ers, and Washington Redskins. He was a starting left tackle, converted from a defensive end for the Illinois Fighting Illini football team, for which he also played in the 2008 Rose Bowl. So Xavier, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me today.
I'm so happy that you are here. I think that your message is so important to share with people who actually go to our website and look for sources, for information, for help when they're dealing with something. And I'm sure that in football, I'm sure there are a lot of young men who would want to hear from you and hear your story. So tell us how you got into football, just briefly.
Okay. Well, when I got into football, I was listening to my dad's stories when I was a kid. He actually played at Dunbar High School. He was just telling me all these stories about how he had so much fun playing. He actually got to play in college as well at Valparaiso University there. And I wanted to be like my dad, so I started playing when I was 8 years old with a team in Detroit, the Southwest Gators. I only played the 1 year Pee Wee, and then I didn't play again until high school. But by the time I was done playing in high school, I had multiple scholarship offers. I was a two-way starter after not having played much at all my freshman year. I just took that as a challenge, and since I wanted to play and be like my dad, I worked as hard as I could. Then I ended up in University of Illinois, just started defensive end there. Had a pretty rough injury early on, and actually sat out a whole year, took a medical red shirt. Then when I got back on the field, I was switched to offensive line, and I played 2 years of offensive line in college, and then an additional 10 professionally as an offensive lineman.
Oh, well, that sounds like you've had a lot of exciting times, and the dream of most kids that are in high school playing football today are to be where you are, to accomplish what you have accomplished, which is really terrific, and I'm very grateful that you're sharing your information. You mentioned that you have had some challenges with mental health. Would you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it's something that's, looking back in hindsight, I've been dealing with for a very long time, most of my life, in fact, and I was just, under the assumption that, that's just the way I was programmed. That's just the way that, I'm always going to be. I'm always going to be sad and never really want to be involved in anything and just disconnect from everyone. And it was, something I'd just been, hiding for so long, and just trying to self-medicate for a very long time with different means, and that's all came to a head, and I was no longer able to continue down the path I was going down. So it was self-destructive. I was hurting people around me, and it wasn't until my wife, who was my rock, who was really the only reason I'm here today, told me to get help and held my hand through the whole thing and made sure that everything was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's wonderful when you have somebody who can be your rock and actually be there for you. When did you actually realize that something was going on?
When I realized that I was, the amount that I was drinking at the time was becoming dangerous, and it was all just to make myself feel better. That when it really started to spill over into my everyday life, that's when I really decided to stop lying to myself that I had issues going on mentally that I need help with, and I can't do it alone. This was maybe 5 years ago now.
Mm-hmm. So once that happened, what did you do? Once you realized that something's going on, I need to do something, I need some help, what did you do?
I went to at the time I was playing for a team in Canada, the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. There was a doctor that was there, our team doctor, that I actually had a good relationship with, that I trusted, and also knew that he was bound by a confidentiality clause. And I went to him and told him what was going on, told him, I don't know where to go from here. I don't know who to talk to or even how to begin with this. And he referred me to another physician, to a psychologist and also to a psychiatrist. And between those two is when we came with the diagnosis of anxiety and depression. And I was actually medicated for a while. I was medicated for a number of years, and just this last year, I've actually been able to not require the medication to keep myself where I need to mentally.
So what actually happened to you is what happens to a lot of our young people, is that when they deal with something like this and they don't understand what it's all about, they self-medicate. They do things to try to get the relief that they need, and then they're not getting it. And then so they come to the realization that something has to happen, something has to change, because they're not going to be able to function like that and accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. So do you believe that the anxiety and depression that was diagnosed may have come from some injuries during football?
Well, from what I've experienced, it was definitely exacerbated and made all the more difficult. It's one thing, it's a very hard transition, just normally going from high school to college. That effect is compounded when you throw on top of it a sport. And the demands of the sports in college, and college sports are huge money makers. There's huge amounts of pressure and stress put on the athletic directors, all the way to the coaches, and the coaches in turn put all that on the players. And you throw school on top of that, and it's hard enough for a regular student who just has school to worry about to deal with all the new stressors of being in college alone. If you throw in the mix between being an athlete as well, I mean, waking up at 5 a.m. to go to study hall, then go to training, then go to class, then go back to training, then go back to study hall, and that's more in a day than the average person does. I mean, it's an extreme amount of pressure that's put on athletes, and when you're not really understanding how you're feeling to begin with, when you're not sure what's actually going on, going through that just makes it all the tougher, all the harder to deal with. And you throw in the mix of being a professional with it. It's no longer something you're doing with your friends because it's fun. And it's no longer something you're doing because it's getting you into school. Now this is your job. Mm-hmm. And the second you're not performing, the second you're not, as soon as the metrics don't pan out and you can't bring something positive to the team, then you're gone. Your dream that you've had since you were a child is gone, and also your paycheck is gone. Mm-hmm. So, and the fact that football is a contact sport, it's going to take it out of you, not only mentally but physically. And I let parts of my body out on that field, across 2 countries, and just measuring the amount of impacts that I've taken over the years as an offensive lineman, where the person that is, can ruin my day is just a few inches away from me and is going to be coming at me as fast and as hard as they can, with the intent of moving me out of the way and getting to their goal. And my whole existence involves stopping them however I can. And it's like having someone stand in front of you and just swing a baseball bat over and over and over. And there are days after games, I couldn't move for days at a time. I would just be stuck there. There are games I don't remember playing because I was hit so hard. Whether they were legal hits or illegal hits, I was still hit. And there's chunks of time that are missing from my life. And they're still on film somewhere because I was still playing.
Right. You said you spoke to your team doctor. Did you feel that if the other, and because you trusted him, did you feel that the other players would not understand? Were you feeling the stigma or the pinch of the stigma related to mental illness?
I wasn't as worried about my teammates accepting or not accepting, coming forward with my anxiety and depression. I was more worried about the coaches and the higher ups, because ultimately they would write our checks, and if they decided they didn't want to deal with a player that's dealing with mental issues because they would be high risk or something like that, or however they would perceive it, then I would have lost not only my dream, but my well-being at the time. But I was very fortunate that my teammates were the most accepting and most welcoming and understanding. There are some players that they just couldn't comprehend what depression was, or someone that was dealing with anxiety. They just couldn't comprehend. They're like, well, why can't you just stop
Get over it?
Yeah, why can't you just get over it? Why can't you just stop it? And it went from that to being like very long and productive conversations about how it all works, and how it's not something I can control and just switch on and off. It's always there, and just being able to just constantly deal with it is, it's not it's something that has to be learned, and it can't, it doesn't just happen. And we ended up having very good conversations, and they're more understanding now.
Right, and that is one of the challenges that a lot of the teenagers that I talk to say, that people say, get yourself together. You'll be fine. Just stop acting like the way you're acting. They just expect them to just get it together and keep moving forward. And it shocks me, because if someone broke their arm, you wouldn't say just get it together and keep moving. But yet they're not seeing that as something is going on, and we really need to deal with that. It is a mental illness. It is a disorder, and it's like anything else. It's like having kidney disease or some other illness that you have to be treated for, and then you'll be fine, or at least hopefully you'll be fine. And yet we have that issue all the time. It happens a lot, where people assume that you have anxiety and you have depression simply because you choose to.
Yeah.
So that's one of the challenges that many young people face today. So when you decided to get some help and you started to see a recovery, what happened? How did that proceed?
Well, I started seeing, I just noticed like the lights seemed brighter, that the days actually seemed like they were, good things aren't going to be happening soon. Like, my outlook became more positive in life, and it was more, it literally was like someone turned up the dimmer switch, and I was out of that dark void, at least I wasn't as far into it, most days. And, my relationships became better. I was becoming a better husband. I was just being a better person all around, because there was finally, it's like the weights weren't lifted, but suddenly I had more than one, I had multiple spotters helping me, and it just seemed, it's definitely seems more like more of a positive outlook on what to expect in the future, instead of just dreading everything constantly. Knowing that I have the support system around me is the biggest thing that's been helpful.
So what is some of the advice that you give to young people who may be dealing with anxiety and depression, or any other disorder for that matter? What is some of the advice you're giving them?
What I would be saying is, in my experience, if you really feel that you need to speak to someone, then there are resources around. You just have to start by asking one person. Because, given the position I was in, I went to the team doctor not only because I trust him, but I also went to him because there was the confidentiality there. That way, what was said to him was said in confidence. And, some people may or may not have that same luxury in that regard, but there are people that are there that will help help you and don't expect anything, in return.
Okay. Based on your experience, what should their parents be doing for them?
I can answer that in one word: listening. Not just listening, hearing. Because I know oftentimes when it's, as a kid, as we all were at one point, it seemed there were a lot of times where it seemed like we would say everything and not actually be heard. But I mean, to really just listen to your kids and just really understand what it is they're asking for or what it is that they need would be a very, very big step. And I know I'm guilty of it as well, is listening to someone but not really hearing what they're saying. There's always a difference between what someone says and what the other person hears. And finding a way to bridge that gap is definitely going to be a big help, is what I would say in my experience.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I really thank you for being here and for reaching out. And just as everybody knows, on May 19th, we have our Take a Stand walk. It's the Green Hat Walk that we're having at Grant Park in Chicago. And Xavier is going to be there. And please join us and take part in this. He will be talking to our participants, and hopefully you'll get a chance to ask him some questions on your own as well. Thank you.